And we are live. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Soul Survivor podcast. Ryan and I are back to recap episode 13, finale part 1 of Survivor 47. What's up, Ryan?
Dylan, this is new for us. We've never had a recap of finale part 1 before. I mean, we've basically had 2 challenges, 2 tribal councils, and we're set up for a final 4 next week. So I can't wait to get into it.
Yeah, I'm hyped right now to recap this episode. I think I may have had the most freezing cold take of the entire podcast. That we've been podcasting for now like 5 years. This is the coldest take I've ever had. When I said just a few podcasts ago, I said I'm truly worried that this season could come to a boring ending. It could be a few really easy vote outs in a row, and we have had the complete opposite of that. Complete opposite of that. Just absolutely insane.
Sorry, I muted for an ambulance to go by. I mean, I agree with you. I think that if it was not for Operation Italy and Andy flipping, we would have had a very bad pagonging of just Gabe, Kyle, Sam, Genevieve. So it really was, to your point, like it was set up to look like that, and then this massive move happens. And I can't wait to get into this with you because I think the headline, and we'll get into both boots, is we said last week, like Operation Italy was amazing, but is it going to matter? Are all 3 of them going to survive? And I had said, I'm like, I don't think one of them is going to survive. And obviously Andy gets the first clip, but I'm excited to kind of get into it all.
Yeah, I'm really excited to get into it. I thought this was a fantastic episode. I think we've got 2 in a row. I said that I thought that this was the best 2 episode span, so like 2 in a row, since like 40. I thought maybe the 45 had that really strong run as well, kind of towards the end where I was like, this is really, really good. But I think that this was probably the best 2 episode span between Operation Italy and this episode. Since 40. Really, really good TV. I happened to watch it a second time last night, which I never do, but one of my friends, he did not watch it yet. So I was like, oh, let's just run it right now. So I ended up watching it twice. It's fresh in my head. Let's get right into it. Andy gets booted first in a 2 boot episode. And to be honest with you, I mean, what better way for Andy's arc to end than for him to get himself voted out of the game after all this?
It basically was the perfect arc to Andy's story because he opens up the game with his meltdown on day 3. At that point, no one takes him seriously. No one thinks he's a threat. They underestimate him completely. Don't think he has a shot to win. Ends up making some big moves, flips on a lot of alliances, and then is like, you know what? Because Rachel's already gone, I'm going to reveal that I've actually been playing a good game, do some jury management, and do some jury stumping, and ends up being like, oh no, we have to get rid of Andy because you're actually a big threat. So I think we were discussing this whole season, like, what's Andy's story going to be? Is it going to be like an Emily flippin' arc? Is he actually going to win? But I can't think of, like, to your point, I can't think of a better way for Andy's arc to come completely full circle here.
Yeah, I think, like, to be honest with you, I've thought a lot about Andy's move. First of all, I think Operation Italy was the correct move for Andy.
Have to, yes.
I think that it set him up pretty much almost perfectly towards the end game. I think, like, a lot of people week to week will, go back and be like, oh, they got voted out next. It wasn't a good move. First of all, I think Operation Italy was still a fantastic move and the right move for Andy. The issue here is just somehow, some way, nobody thought that Rachel had anything, which is unusual in modern Survivor, right? Especially given the fact that, like, nobody knew about Sue's idol, right? So people thought Genevieve had the, I guess, one and only idol.
Yeah.
But, like, I can't wrap my head around the fact. I guess people thought, like, here's what it was. I think she had the vote block, which everybody knew about. And then also, I think that her, playing the shot in the dark a few episodes ago, again, in Survivor, that's really just she probably played the shot in the dark, 4 or 5 days ago. So I think in people's heads, they were like, oh, she played the shot in the dark, she must not have an idol. But of course, it's the new era. Anybody can have an idol. So I was pretty surprised that nobody suspected that a player who has been brought up for as big of a threat that Rachel has been called on the island. I'm surprised that nobody really thought that she had an idol. Andy tries to do some quick jury management, which I think theoretically, if she didn't have an idol, is not a bad move, especially, you're headed towards the end game. Rachel is going to be probably one of the more influential players on the jury, and she knows you really well. I thought that wasn't a terrible move. The issue is he was so convincing, and obviously she was choosing who went home. And by the way, obviously the dramatic play, the idol play, voting out Andy, amazing. I think on top of the actual just dramatics of it all, this was a game-winning vote out for Rachel.
Yeah, I think this was like, if she is going to win, and by the way, we'll get into this later with like our predictions, but I mean, I really do think this is Rachel's game to lose. Only other chances if Sam gets there without her and wins. But yeah, no, the whole season we've been hearing Rachel's a big threat. Rachel's a great social player. She's in with everybody. And, again, I don't think you need like a massive move to win the game. I think you need to be well connected, make small moves and set yourself up. But like, yeah, I mean, other than this move, you can't point to anything else and say like, oh, like, the Gabe move, the Kyle move, like that's Rachel's move. Like this, obviously, with this whole thing, like this is Rachel's move. So this is like, if she already was a threat, this is like the cherry that she needed to like get herself over the top and do it. I'm fully convinced that the only reason they did not think she had an idol, because I've never seen this in a while where people are so bold to assume she doesn't have one. I gotta think they thought to themselves, we know about her vote blocker, and Sue might have something. Well, they didn't know that, but they knew the red paint. I think they were convinced when Genevieve was like, "Oh yeah, I found it at the Italian Feast reward." They probably were convinced, "Oh, that's the merge idol." She has nothing, because I've never seen people so confident. We didn't even hear one confessional to say she could have something, but I doubt it. They were fully sold she had nothing. She was dead in the water after the challenge. And that leads to Andy trying to do the management. And I know you're referencing Stephen Fishback's, comment where it's like, if she really has nothing, not a bad strategy to get somebody on the jury to start, pitching for you, because I don't think Andy can just show up to Final Tribal Council and be like, oh, I was the mastermind the whole time. They're going to be like, no, you weren't. So it was not a bad play. Obviously, it was the worst thing you could do to tell Rachel, who's going to decide to vote you or Sam and then ends up picking you. And the last thing I'll say really quick before I go back to you is I'll be really interested to see whenever Rachel is out of the game, whether she wins or not, if they ask her, was that conversation the sole reason you decided Andy? Or like, were you already kind of like leaning Andy anyway? I'll be really interested to see her be like, no, I was fully convinced to go Sam. And then that one conversation from Andy, like if Andy just kept his mouth shut for 2 more hours, he would have been fine. But
yeah, I want to credit Rachel's social game as well for, being able to pull a move like this off without anybody except for Sue really knowing what was going to happen. Like she did a fantastic acting job on the beach when she was talking to Sam and Andy. She's like crying and like, oh, it's okay. Like, it's just a game. Like after this game, we'll all be friends, like stuff like that. And I was just like, unbelievable. And of course, and then we, it goes right to her confessional after where she's like, it's my funeral, but I'm not going, like, she's not going home. I'm not going home tonight. So that was, it is a testament to her social game and her strategic game as well for everybody to assume that she did not have an idol. So I just thought that scene particularly with Sam and Andy it was perfect.
And also one thing that was not aired that Andy said in his exit press was because again, if you remember, before the Andy Rachel conversation happens, right before Tribal, after the reward, Rachel and Sue, they go to Andy to say like, all right, look, Andy, I know Rachel's a threat here, but like, look, Sam and Genevieve are still a really scary pair in the game. Can we vote out Sam tonight? And Andy's like, oh, like, I'll think about it. Should I flip back on Sam? I don't know. I mean, I'm already a flipper, but this could be another big move for me. And one thing that wasn't aired, actually, I don't know if you saw this, was Andy says Rachel did the whole thing that Carla did with Cassidy. And we've seen this a couple times on the show where like she kind of threatens her jury vote, where she's like, Andy, you flipped on me like 3 times already. If you lie to me again, I'm not writing your name down, and Sue's not writing your name down to win. And Andy was like, Andy said in the interview, he was like, oh shit, like I can't afford to not have 2 votes because I don't even know if I'm gonna get enough votes anyway. So that's why he goes to Rachel and says, I'm gonna be straight up with you. I'm gonna write your name down. So he tried to like be honest with her because she kind of threatened her vote there. Obviously, then he talks too much and gets himself voted out. But that they didn't show Rachel kind of threatening her jury vote as well.
Yeah, and another thing that Rachel did with Andy that I thought was so interesting was I almost thought she was coming on too strong with it, where she was like, the jury doesn't respect you. Quote, it's basically a nothing burger. That's what she says to Andy.
Love that,
right?
nothing burger.
And if I were out there and I knew, like, if I were Andy and I knew that I played a pretty good game up until then, that would annoy me. I would get annoyed by that, right? And I think he said in his exit press, he's like, I was the perfect person to say something like that too, because I was so insecure about my game. I was just like, I knew that I had done enough, or he said, I knew that I'd played a really good game, but I was insecure about the way that other people saw it. So for him, he was like, he kept thinking to himself, like, I have to keep proving her wrong. I have to keep proving her wrong. And it played right into her hands. I mean, obviously it literally leads him to going over to her and being like, here's why I should be voted out tonight, basically. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I mean, it was just a masterclass from Rachel this episode. I do want to rewind a little bit to into the episode. Right when we get back from the Operation Italy Tribal Council, we have a pretty funny moment on the beach where they're kind of all acting that it was an accident, and Teeny somehow believed it, which is, I don't know. I mean, I don't know how Teeny believed it, but I think the funnier part of it is that we got Spy Shack 2.0 from Rachel. Rachel goes, kind of kneels down by the bushes and is able to hear that she's the next target. She's the biggest target, right? Which I think kind of sets up the fact that she knows that she's going to have to play her idol at 6, right there. So that was a cool little scene as well. I also liked the dark editing where the screen went black. You know what I'm talking about? Like the screen, like she was walking on the beach, the screen went black, and that was pretty cool. But yeah, that was a hilarious scene. Yeah,
Rachel was in her Vlachos bag to kind of do some spying there, and I mean, I think Teeny is a good character on the show. I do feel bad because she kind of got put in the blender in this episode a little bit, and I don't know how anyone could believe it. It's an accident that that Andy decided to flip at the same time Sam and Genevieve were like, oh, maybe we'll throw some votes on Caroline, see if it works, see if it's no shot. And then even a tribal council, Rachel's like, Jeff, can I just kind of call bullshit? There's no way it was an accident. Rachel's like, I'm not buying this at all. Yes, I could understand maybe in San Juan del Sur, Natalie does the whole oh, I voted for the wrong person by accident in the split. That could happen. You confuse the split, that could happen. I'm not going to buy somebody flipping and then the other two people going, oh, let's just randomly write someone's name down, see if it works. So that was a fun moment to see that. And I think that proves, Dylan, that Operation Italy, for anyone saying, well, Andy got voted out, no, that was the right move, because not only do they get out Caroline, they basically still get Teeny to flip. And Teeny was on their side for this Rachel vote, and Rachel survives because she has the idol. Teeny even reveals, hey, Rachel has the block of vote as well. So thank God Rachel heard that conversation, because if Rachel doesn't hear that conversation and she loses the challenge, yes, maybe she still plays her idol, but maybe she doesn't. Maybe she just uses the vote block and then she goes home because Teeny's flipped, and then it doesn't matter. So that was a really big moment for Rachel to kind of get that information.
Also, I think not only that, but her relationship with Sue here was crucial, because we saw several scenes where Sue was like, well, first of all, Rachel tells Sue about the idol, the first person that she tells all game, in order to kind of cement that trust, right? And then you have Sue, who is kind of going back to Rachel, between the challenge and tribal council in that episode, and is like, you can't trust them at all. You have to play your idol. You can't trust them. They're not voting for you. Andy's not. I mean, this was before Andy had gone back and been like, I'm voting for you. But you're like, Andy, you can't trust Andy. He's going to vote for you. So I think that Sue, the relationship with Sue, also was able to give her a few different reads and information that she might not have been able to get if it weren't for that relationship.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we've seen a couple times that Sue, and maybe it's an age thing where she feels like as an older player in the game, she feels like she's sometimes on the outs. And I think she appreciates when people come up to her to try to build trust. I mean, obviously we saw that episode 1 with Gabe kind of locking her in right away. And that's why she was fully loyal to Gabe. She was fully loyal to Caroline. And then, somebody betrays her, like Kyle writes her name down. Someone flips on her. She's like, they're dead to me. I hate them. So Sue values that. So I think that was, to your point, very key, that Sue's not at this point. Sue's not turning on Rachel. If Sue pulls out the Final Four challenge, it would not surprise me if she brings Rachel. So I'm not saying she will, but we've seen Sue really value that loyalty. and anybody in their right mind would never take Rachel to the end. I still think Rachel, if she doesn't win the challenge, she's going to fire. But in a world where Sue wins that challenge, I would not be surprised if she brings Rachel because of that loyalty. And I think Sue, I'm not saying that Sue's like fine losing to Rachel, but I think Sue is going to value that above all else. So
yeah, I agree with that. And then we have we didn't speak about the challenge yet. That's kind of the only part of the first hour of the episode that we didn't really touch on. Rachel says she needs immunity. Genevieve beats Rachel basically at her own strength, which was the puzzle. By the way, I just want to give credit. I thought, especially the second one, but these challenges, given the fact that we had this like whole Genevieve Rachel type arc, like storyline, these challenges were so much better strictly because, like, as a viewer, it's like Rachel versus Genevieve, basically, right? Yeah. And they were basically going head to head towards the end of both of these challenges, which was awesome. But yeah, Genevieve's able to win that, which is her first immunity. And I mean, we're going to talk a lot about Genevieve, like, come when we start talking about the second part of this episode. Yeah. But I just want to, like, again, praise her for just continuing to figure out a way to survive basically every single episode. It's crazy. It was crazy.
Yeah, I know we're going to give Genevieve her flowers in the second part of the episode, and kind of we'll do a great eulogy on her as a player and as a character. But yeah, no, from a storytelling perspective, it was really great to see both these challenges come down to Rachel and Genevieve, and each one of them takes one of those wins. I've always wondered, and maybe they just don't put this on camera, or maybe Jeff tells them not to. I've always wondered, when it's like the logo puzzle, all you got to do, if you don't know how it's going to work, is take your buff off and like just use your buff as like the answer key. And maybe they'll tell me like, oh, but it's still hard to figure out what piece goes where. I'm sure, but I've always wondered, like, if people are ever like struggling, because I think Teeny and maybe Sue had like one piece and they never got off the ground at all. I've always wondered, like, why not, if it's the actual logo, you have it on your buff, just use your buff in that moment.
I wonder if they tell them that they're not allowed to do that.
Yeah, maybe they're like,
you have to keep your buff on your head. Because I've never, you're right. I haven't seen anyone do that, but yeah, that's an interesting point. Another, I guess the one last point that I'll bring up from this first part, the jury was loving Rachel's move, loving it. Like, you have Caroline, who's like the F yeah. And then you have the whole jury was like, that was awesome, that was amazing. Like, they were all so excited when Rachel pulled out idol. This jury like loves Rachel. Like, if she gets to the end, like, we could be seeing the first jury sweep in quite some time, in my opinion. I don't know if they're gonna do that, because we do see, like, I think when the jury's all together in Ponderosa, they're like, oh, well, like, I'll put one vote on one person. Yeah. This way we give them second place. But it is the Ado sweep is for sure possible this season.
Do you know what idol play that reminded me of, honestly?
Which one?
Amanda's in Micronesia, where like she's like, I got the idol, and then like the jury is like cheering like crazy. I mean, obviously Amanda loses that season, but to be fair, everybody that was on the jury at that point, like all the guys all voted for her, and then Eliza didn't vote for her, and then I think at that point, then Alexis, and basically at that point, the rest of the people in the game all voted for Parvati. But at that point, when Amanda's like dead to rights, everyone's like, Amanda's screwed. She whips out the idol, and then the jury's like cheering. That was the same type of thing where this jury is loving Rachel and probably thought Rachel is cooked, and then now they're like, because at this point in the game, I mean, think about it. We all know, the audience knows if Rachel gets there, she's going to win, because Saul loves Rachel, Sierra loves Rachel. Caroline obviously loves that move from Rachel. It's already 3. I'm sure Gabe and Kyle are fine with Rachel. So at this point, like, the jury is already so pro Rachel. Like, she's got it locked in. And that was, like, to your point, Caroline's reaction kind of summarizes it.
Yup. All right. To move on to the second part of the episode, we have everyone gets back to camp, and we just have, like, as described by the rest of the players, Genevieve and Rachel kind of being like, oh, like, I can't believe you survived. Like, it's between us. And I think that scene it got me a little scared for a second, because I'm like, oh no, is this like the place where like the edit starts to turn and like they're both going to go out next?
Yeah.
But then by the end of the episode, I was kind of over that. But like I love how, like, right after the first tribal council, that Genevieve versus Rachel storyline gets like really, really built up. There was that one line from Genevieve that was like, we can't, like something like, we can't, like, this island's not for both of us, or we can't both be on this island. So that was super, super interesting. And awesome. That was an awesome confessional from Genevieve. But yeah, I was loving this Genevieve Rachel storyline all the way. I thought it was so funny when the other three got so mad and were just like, oh, like, how could they be this cocky? Like, how could they be like, it's between them? We're sitting right here. And I'm just sitting here thinking like, and Teeny had a comment that was like, Teeny had a comment that was, I'm trying to think of what, I think she was like, what'd she say? She was like,
Teeny?
Yeah, she was like, oh, like, I don't think it's down to them. Like, I think anybody could win. And I'm sitting here like, oh my God, like, come on. Right. But yeah, the build up with this Genevieve Rachel storyline, bottom line, so good.
No, I mean, it's hard. I mean, when you're in the game and you don't see everything the audience sees, you think, because we are all the hero of our own stories. I mean, we all think that we are going to, I mean, people don't play this game because they don't think they're going to win. Everybody that shows up on that beach thinks I'm going to win this game. So yeah, if you're Teeny and you're Sam and you're Sue and you just hear Genevieve and Rachel be like, oh, you're a threat. No, you're a threat. Like, well, if I don't win, you're going to win. Like, yeah, this is our story. It's like, screw you. It's like, no, we can still win this game, even though the audience knows, like, if either of them get there, they're going to win. And the only way they don't win is if the final three is Teeny, Sam, and Sue, which is obviously still possible. But yeah, no, I mean, they obviously didn't like being discounted, and the whole season, or not the whole season, but like the whole merge has been about really Genevieve versus Rachel. Even when they got to the merge, I think they even referenced in the episode, they're like, yeah, right away when we got here, we knew that we couldn't work together because we're just too big of a threat, and we recognize each other. And I mean, yeah, I mean, then the next challenge ends up being them as well. So it really was their story.
I was texting my brother throughout watching the episode, and I was like, this Genevieve versus Rachel is Chiefs versus Bills. Like, literally, like that's how I felt, right? I was like, this is just so awesome to watch. I think, you know what it is for me is that I think we've had really, really good, dominant, strategic players in the new era, like at times, right? But I feel like they've kind of been like one-off, where it's like Jesse was like really dominant, right? Amazing strategist, but like he was really like the only one that I could sit there from 43 and be like, you were really, really, really good at the game, like head over heels, like pretty much above everybody there, right? Season 46, for example, Charlie, I thought, was a similar way, whereas like I feel like Charlie is far and away the best strategist. Like, he doesn't have a rival on this season. I know he didn't end up winning. I know they tried to play up Maria as like the end rival, but at the end of the day, both of them were working together basically the entire time. This was really the first season in a while that I felt like we had two amazing strategists, two amazing players clashing and going head to head eventually at the end, knowing that literally the final 5 immunity challenge, which by the way was amazing with all the drops and everything, they were going head to head, Genevieve and Rachel. It was like, you knew right there. It was like, if Genevieve wins this challenge over Rachel, Rachel's going to go home, and Genevieve might end up being the winner of the season. And it was the other way around, where, you know, if Genevieve loses this challenge, right, then Rachel is probably going to vote her out and might be the winner of the season. So that was first time in a while that I really felt like that. It was just so awesome to watch.
Yeah, no, I mean, because at this point, they both have no more ammunition. Rachel doesn't have an idol anymore. If she loses, she's gone. Genevieve, her idol is fake, even though we'll soon discuss all the, you know, the blunder stuff that happened there. But yeah, whoever lost this challenge was most likely going to be going home. So it really was do or die. And I love this challenge. This was, you know, this is sometimes used as like the final immunity challenge. So seeing it here at 5 was very interesting. Almost makes me think, are we going to see another dexterity type of challenge at the final 4, or are we gonna get like some big massive challenge now? I don't know, but usually they save this or some motion like for the very end.
Well, if you look at the coming attractions, the preview,
I actually forgot, so yeah.
Right, the preview of next week, and again, this could be reward, so who knows, but I doubt it at this point. There was some kind, it was one of those at least the beginning part of the challenge was one of those like nets where you're crawling through the mud. which is unusual for the Final Four, but it could be the first part of like some kind of long challenge. I miss the days of the huge maze or the really long multi-part challenge in the final four. So bring it to me. I would love if that was it.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'll be curious to see what they do for that final challenge. And then when we get back from the challenge, I mean, this second part of the episode really focused a lot on Teeny. Like, obviously, we're going to see Genevieve go out here, and we're going to talk about her and kind of like her impact on the season. But I mean, this really was Teeny's, like 15, 20-minute arc here where, basically now that Genevieve loses the challenge, she's going to probably go home, but people think, but no, we can't get rid of her because she has her idol, so we should actually just go for Sam. And then Sam, to his credit, realizes the only way I get through this is if I tell them Genevieve's idol is fake. And then that's where Teeny like goes through the whole game and is like, oh my God, like I try to work with her, but from Keyshawn to Saul to Operation Italy, she's like lied to me the entire time. And I cannot get lied to again. I'm just gonna, she's got to go, basically.
Yeah, I think, we knew Sam was going to eventually do this, right? In order to save himself. He had to tell everybody that Genevieve's idol was fake. However, I think what makes this season so good is that Genevieve and Sam had played off so many different things so well, especially Genevieve, that everybody still did not know whether to trust Genevieve when she literally herself told Teeny the idol is fake, which is like, I thought that she was at first when I'm watching it, and again, I think the dream scenario of this season would have been a Genevieve and Rachel both make the Final Four. That would have been amazing. That would have been, I mean, I'm seeing a lot of people question, like, why was this split into 2 episodes? Like, why do we have a Final Four episode next week? Right? Like, this would have been, can you imagine if we were podcasting right now and Genevieve and Rachel were both sitting at Final Four? I mean, it would have been unbelievable, right? So that would have been unreal. I'm sitting here, as soon as Genevieve was like, admits that it's fake, I was like, no, why do you do that? And then I sat there and I'm like, wait a second. Like, is this some kind of like reverse psychology thing where, she's lied to Teeny every single time. And then all of a sudden she's just like, it's fake. And is she going to expect Teeny to not believe her and think it's real? Granted, we looked at the exit press, Genevieve's exit press. She said that she just didn't expect Teeny to come back to her and be like, you have a fake idol. Like, it's fake. Like, she didn't think that Sam actually gonna tell everyone. So she was just taken off guard and like didn't know what to do and felt really bad at the time and was just like told her the truth. So I'm gonna take Genevieve's word for that she just was like kind of just stumbled in the moment and just like told her the truth. But then she said, Genevieve, in the exit press, that she said she kind of goes back, her and Teeny go back to camp, and she hears everybody like, oh, no way it's fake. No way it's actually fake. Like, it can't be it. And then she was like, oh, wait, like I might actually be alive. Mm-hmm. I thought that this was like a full reflection of how good the strategic game has been this season. Like, just think about it. Like, it's the first time in a long time that like just people are just generating possibilities by themselves and not with just some like outside advantage that's coming in at Final Five and stuff like that. Right? Interesting, right? So it was awesome to watch. I think ultimately Sue having the idol and Rachel having immunity, obviously they feel like they have nothing to lose if we just vote Genevieve. Yeah. Like, what's the worst that happens? Like, it reflects onto Teeny. Like, oh, well, that sucks. But yeah. So I think they had to vote Genevieve, right? And Sam obviously they didn't believe him, but Sam was telling the truth about voting for Genevieve. So I think Genevieve said in the exit press she knew she was going home at 5. But I really did think that she was going to potentially survive that vote for a second.
Yeah, it's all like you said. It's almost like you have less advantages, you have less shots in the dark, less advantages, no idols. It's almost like more pure game is better. But no, I think that it really just made them so confused whether it was real or fake, and they didn't know what to believe. Even when Teeny like gets confirmation that it's fake, she goes back to Rachel and Sue, and they're like, "Yeah, we still don't know. And like you mentioned, what happens worst case? Rachel is immune. Sue's going to play her idol. If they vote for Genevieve and it ends up being, real, oh, well, Teeny's going to go home then. I mean, like, no sweat off their back. I mean, that's why Teeny at least, because I think in the episode when you see Teeny eventually vote for Sam there, everyone's like, oh my God, she got fooled again. I think she did the whole Devin Pinto thing where she's like, I'm going to throw the vote on Sam in case the idol's real. But no, they really just were not sure whatsoever if it was real or fake. And I think in that moment, because I also, like you, was like, no, why did she confirm it was fake? I don't think she really had a choice, because yeah, it would have just been then her word against Sam if she really doubled down on the lie. But then at that point, Sam could just pull out all the stops and be like, well, number one, I have the note that says that this was expired. So I have documentation. Number two, I could tell you she used my beads from here. She used her beads from there. Like, I mean, like, yeah, it still would have been like, did you hear that?
Yes.
For foghorn. Like, it would have just been his word against her word, but I think he really would have had the evidence to be like, no, this really is fake. And at that point, if you get caught in like that final lie, you're screwed. So I think her trying to finally say to Teeny, yes, this is actually fake. I think she knew she was gone, but she tried everything she could.
Yeah, I think. All right, let's segue this. So obviously Genevieve goes home right after all this. Teeny still ends up voting for Sam, which it looks like Teeny clarified on Twitter that it was like planned that to throw like a stray on Sam just in case something chaotic happens. Yeah. I guess to protect against herself. But regardless, Genevieve goes home. I wanted to talk about really quick, like, my reaction to this once this ends, right, is I'm sitting there like, if Genevieve was able to get through this vote and make it to Final Four,
yeah,
I would have been saying some absurd things, not only about like the season, right? I think it would have judged if we had a Genevieve and Rachel Final Four. I mean, that would have been all time, right? I think it would have like this season. I would have ranked way higher than I would. I mean, I'm still going to rank it high, but I would way higher than I would have it ranked. I was about to say some absurd things about Genevieve in terms of like ranking first-time players as well. But I do think Genevieve was an amazing player. For sure, one of my favorites of the new era, if not my favorite of the new era.
Yeah.
I just think she checks all the boxes for what you want of a Survivor player, right? She is really, really strategic, and she is not afraid to be cutthroat, yet she's an amazing character, gives great confessionals. I mean, you had people on Reddit putting together 3-minute videos of her talking to herself during challenges. And I think that the Survivor editors did a really good job of like getting us on Genevieve's side early, because I love the silent assassin arc that she had, right? First of all, her character arc the whole season is super unique and one that I'm not sure we've really seen before. But we had the like silent assassin arc where she's basically invisible the first 2 to 3 episodes. And then out of nowhere, the Keyshawn vote happens and she just comes out of nowhere as the quote unquote silent assassin, right? And then the rest of the game, at least the next few episodes, coming into, past the soul vote, she's kind of we see her as like cold-blooded, like willing to make the big move, like really, really good socially, like people will fall for what she does. And then she kind of has this also like character moment where she's like, like I really haven't used my social game to, like really make close bonds because I'm like afraid of doing this and hurting people, which I think is part of the game, right? Like that is why Survivor is so interesting. And then obviously her arc ends with her, the one quote unquote, according to her words, the one like true friend, real friend that she made out there ends up having to vote her out. Right. So I think it was like just an unbelievable arc. I know Jeff has made several comments on his podcast about like Andy's the perfect player to bring back for 50. So is Genevieve. So I hope that Genevieve is on season 50.
100%. One or both of them will be back for 50 for sure. Because like Jeff said, he wants people to make these moves. It doesn't need to be like the biggest move in the world, but like take a swing, like just like take a swing, see what happens. That's what they're looking for. So one of them or both of them will be back. I think she was a great character and a great player, and she's one of very few people I've ever seen really like verbalize in confessional, like I wanted to play a hard game, and then this blindside in 47 seasons there have been hundreds and hundreds of blindsides, and I've never seen somebody say that affected me so much that like I can't let anybody else in, and I have to just play completely cold, and I can't make alliances. And if people see me as distant, so be it. I can't hurt someone like that again. And I've never seen, I no offense, I say Keyshawn got more airtime than Erica, like in the new era. Like Keyshawn really has been dominating the edits more than some. Keyshawn's on the show more than Sue at this point. Like we've never seen somebody get this much, flashback, because it really has defined her whole game. Because like you mentioned, she gets the purple edit for the first 3 episodes. Everyone's like, where's Genevieve? She emerges, has a crazy episode 4, then has the whole Rome arc. She gets rid of Saul, then she becomes a threat. So it really was a crazy story for Genevieve. And like you mentioned, she's talking to herself, and people love her as a character. They're calling her Parvati. People are getting like, Rob was getting like duped in the exit press about the fire making. So she really is, she's one for the books for sure.
Yeah. And I mean, if we just go like, okay, she had the Keyshawn vote out. She had the Soul vote out. She was a major part of our Operation Italy. Like, how many players, especially in their first time playing, have those type of moves on their resume? Her resume would have been ridiculous had she got past the final 5 vote. Yeah. Ridiculous.
It's not going to happen, because I don't think she's coming back. Parvati's coming back. But if Parvati and Genevieve were on the same season, I think Twitter would actually crash. I think Twitter would not be able to handle it whatsoever.
All right. Now that we've wrapped up talking about kind of recapping the episode, I want to look towards next week.
Yep.
Which we haven't really spoken about a lot. 4 people left: Rachel, Sam, Teeny, and Sue. I think that everybody kind of has the consensus, and I mean, they've made it obvious to us that Rachel is the heavy favorite going into next week. I would say what's so interesting to me is, I think this may be another thing that Stephen Fishback tweeted, but like the finale is you always start to see like, all right, like the first part of the finale happens, like the final 5 boot, and it always like leads up to the winner eventually winning, right? And you always hear like stuff from their perspective, like you see things start to go their way. And it feels like with the final 6 and the final 5, we really started to see every part of Rachel's game click and go her way. She loses immunity, but uses the idol perfectly, votes out Andy. She wins immunity to the final 5 and gets out her biggest adversary in Genevieve, right? And now we just stop watching. And now we have to wait till next week, which is so weird, because I feel like we should just like mentally, I'm like, I still have an hour left of TV, like before we find out the winner, right? So I want to get your thoughts. We know that Rachel is pretty much a shoo-in to win if she gets to the final 3.
Yes.
The only way that she could lose at this point is losing in fire. Okay. We've been told by everybody that Rachel's the best at fire making. So it seems like that it would be pretty unlikely for her to not win at this point, but you never know. We've seen crazy things happen. I would say Sam clearly has the second best chance to win. I mean, we kind of got a little bit of like Sam has a shot. I mean, we saw Genevieve tell Rachel, like, if us 2 are not there, Sam's going to win the season. We've seen Sam be like, when they were talking and when Rachel and Genevieve were talking and the other 3 were left back at camp, we see Sam, he's like, I have something to say about that. Like, I think Sam does have a lot of respect from the jury as well. So if he were to get there with Teeny and Sue, I think he'd get pretty much all the votes as well. He hasn't played a dominant game, but I think he's scrapped around enough and been in on enough towards the end where I think that he would fairly easily get the win if he goes against Teeny and Sue. So I'm curious to hear and then Teeny and Sue, I think, to close out my opening thoughts on the final 4, Teeny and Sue, I think, have next to no chance to win. I think maybe Teeny's slightly higher than Sue, but I don't even know at this point. All right. So let's hear your thoughts.
I'm ready to say it, and people can clip this if they want, because obviously we had the same thing happen with Gabler. We're not getting Gabler. I am ready to say there is 0% chance Sue or Teeny win, and I can't believe I'm saying this. I think Sue, and I never would have said this weeks ago, I think Sue might actually get more votes than Teeny. Like if it is Sam, Sue, and Teeny, I think Sue could get maybe Caroline's vote, just like as a friend vote, maybe Gabe's vote as a friend vote, but Teeny's going to be the 0 vote finalist. I just think that what we've been what we've seen from the last several weeks is, and no disrespect, Teeny has not been really aware of what's going on in the game, has been left out of the vote numerous times, and she almost kind of had her Troyzan moment this week. Like, she openly said to the jury, she was like, yeah, I've been left out. I don't really know what's going on. Like, which, maybe she's trying to endear herself, but she really has admitted, I've been out of the loop a lot. So if it is Sam, Sue, and Teeny, I think, yes, could it be a sweep for Sam? Sure. But I think Sue could get like 1 vote, maybe 2. Teeny's not going to get any votes here. And yeah, I think the odds makers would say, Rachel's the heavy odds favorite to win if she gets there. Even if Sam is with her, I think Rachel still beats him. The only way she doesn't win, as you mentioned, is she loses in fire, and Sam would win in that case. Now the question becomes the Final Four challenge, and we've never had to discuss this because ever since we started podcasting, we enter the finale before the Final 5. So we've never had this discussion. Obviously, if Rachel wins that challenge, she wins the game. If Sue wins, like I mentioned, I think Sue probably stays loyal to Rachel, probably takes Rachel and loses. I mean, could she take Teeny? Sure. Sue's not taking Sam. Sue does not like Sam. If Teeny wins, I would think Teeny takes Sue to give herself the best shot. If Sam wins, Dylan, here's what happens. Do you think Sam either takes Sue or Teeny and makes the other one go against Rachel? Or does Sam do the Chris Underwood and goes against Rachel?
I have to think that Sam would go to fire against Rachel, right? I think
if he wins immunity.
Yeah, I to be honest, this didn't even cross my mind, and I was thinking about next week, and I started listening to the podcast, and other people were talking about it, and I was like, I think he would do it. I think he would go to fire against Rachel. I don't know. I kind of now that I think about that being a possibility, I kind of think that's what's going to happen, right? Now here's what I think based on what we've seen throughout the entire season, Rachel has, without knowing what the challenge is, Rachel has to be an overwhelming favorite to win the actual Final Four challenge. I mean, she's won 3 immunities. She's showed to be pretty much good at everything. I have to assume that there's also some kind of, even if there's some kind of like relay race at the beginning, I have to assume that there is some kind of major puzzle aspect in this Final Four challenge, right? Because it's the Final Four challenge. I feel like there has to be some kind of puzzle, unless it's like a table maze, maybe. I don't know. Yeah. Maybe something like that. But even so, like a table maze, like it's table maze, you have to have touch, and like Rachel has shown us that she has that, right? Yeah. So I would have to think that Rachel is probably an overwhelming favorite to win the actual final immunity. But if she doesn't, right? And maybe the fire in her glasses is maybe it's a deep fake. They know that we've been onto that, and they're kind of just throwing that in there every time. Or maybe she actually doesn't win. Maybe Sam does win, and maybe Sam does go into fire to go against Rachel. I think if Sam wins, I think that would be the outcome. I do think, here's my thing about Sam, is that I don't feel like, and this is reading heavily into the edit, I don't feel like I feel like if he was going to win the season, then we would have kind of seen him a little bit in a little bit of a different angle or light. I think, Sam has got like the most confessionals in the season. He's been the most visible since pre-merge. Yeah. We know him really, really well, right? But I think kind of towards the end here, we've been kind of getting like a scrappy view of him. We haven't been, there was that deleted scene. I can't, I'm sure a lot of people who are watching this podcast, if you're watching the podcast, you're that much of a diehard Survivor fan, you've probably seen the deleted scene at this point with him and Genevieve, where they're like basically like almost in tears on the beach right before the Final 5. And he's telling Genevieve, like, I have to do this. I have to vote you out. Like, I don't have a choice. I had to tell everyone about the fake idol. Like, this is like to me, that's the type of him voting out his number 1 and Genevieve. To me, that would be highlighted as his like game winning or putting him in the best position to win move. And like, that would be the emotional get over the hump emotional moment for him. Whereas they just completely cut that out of the episode. So did they cut that out of the episode because I'm seeing people speculating maybe it just would have made it too obvious of a boot, which is obviously possible. But also, like, to me, like, that is his story, right? If he wins, like, him, going with Genevieve and then voting her out is a major part of his story. And we saw it, but we really saw it from Teeny's perspective and Rachel's perspective, not really Sam's perspective. So I can't get past that in terms of Sam being a potential winner. Now, of course, I could be completely wrong. And of course, the edit fooling us, right? So it'll be interesting. My end prediction here is that I think Sam gets the Dean. This is a deep cut. Sam gets the Dean season 39 final episode, where I'm going to guess that he wins the final challenge. I'm going to guess that, like, he wins the final challenge. We get a lot of confessionals from him. Like, I really, like, I did it. I made the final 3. I really feel like, my game, I've done this. I made these relationship in the pre-merge. I got burned, but I bounced back. And we're going to be like, everyone's going to be sitting there like, oh my God, like, is this really going to happen? Could Sam actually win this game?
Yeah.
And he's going to say, and I have one, he's going to say, so it's going to look like everything's on the incline for Sam. And then he's going to say, I have one thing left to do, beat Rachel in fire. I think he's going to give up his necklace, go into fire against Rachel and probably lose. And I think that will maybe be the end of his story. So either that, or if he decides to just keep the necklace on, which I will, by the way, I will never fault anybody for keeping the necklace on and going never. Right. I think, obviously if you make the final 3, you're giving yourself a chance, right? Despite that, it would be small against Rachel, but you still give yourself a chance. Whereas if you go against Rachel, who supposedly is the best fire maker, are you really going to beat her? Right. You might just be giving up your shot. Right. So I'll never fault him if he keeps it. If he does keep it, I still think I could still see him, getting that arc. I could see the jury giving him a lot of respect, but ultimately just Rachel probably beats him in like a 7-1 or something like that. So that's what I think ends up happening. I think Teeny, if one of Teeny or Sue is sitting there with Sam or Rachel, they're going to get 0 votes. If Rachel is sitting there with both Teeny and Sue, then maybe one of them will get 1 vote. But yeah, that's my ultimate prediction. I think Sam's going to have a really strong final episode that's going to ultimately lead to him falling short.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. Call me stubborn. I don't care what the jury wants. If I win my way to the final 3, I'm not giving up my necklace. I should not have to give up my necklace to participate in fire making just because I just don't agree with the twist. So I'm never giving up my necklace no matter what. It's so tough because with the deleted scenes, it's so hard to read the editor sometimes. And I think as super fans, we can read the edit sometimes. And there's other times where we 4D chess ourselves and it's too hard. Like, yeah, I could see them cutting out the Sam deleted scene because yes, it would have made it so obvious that Genevieve's going to go and they want some intrigue if someone flips. So that's why they cut it. I could also see it like, oh my God, like if we put this in there, this is going to be Sam's move. This now tells the audience Sam's going to win. He's going to triumph over Rachel, and this is Sam's winning move. I mean, I could see both arguments, so I'm never going to try to decipher why they cut the scene. But no, I mean, I really still think we agree. I think Rachel is the heavy favorite, but I'm not going to sit here and say Sam can't win. I could easily see a world where Sam wins, and I could probably go back to I could go back to one of his first confessionals where, he's like, I'm not a wolf in sheep's clothing. I'm a wolf in wolf's clothing. Like they could pull so many things for Sam if he wins. Like I could easily see a scenario where Sam wins. And I think Sam's arc is also a winner's arc. I still think Rachel has the best story. Rachel has a great game. Rachel's the best player left. Rachel should win, but I could easily paint a Sam win. Sam comes into the game as the young athletic guy who usually does well in these types of seasons. He's on top. He has Sierra. They belittle Andy. He's like, I can drag Andy. He gets blindsided when Sierra goes home. He gets humbled. He then has to play from the bottom. He's a scrappy underdog. Had to fight his way back. So I could easily paint. I could make Sam's final 3 argument for him at this point. So I mean, I could easily see either of them win. And listen, would Sam be a bad winner? No, Sam would be like a fine winner. Obviously would not be nearly as satisfying as a Rachel win, and obviously not as satisfying as a Genevieve win. But I think that's where we're at right now.
Yeah, I'm on the same page. Thank you to all people that are watching live right now, by the way. If you are, like the video, subscribe to the channel. It really will help us out. I think you're right. You're right. I think ultimately Sam's arc is going to be played a really good game. Was a great character. You guys all saw him on the TV. That's why he had the most confessionals. But he ultimately falls just short, whether that be second place or whether that be fourth place. So we'll have to see what happens, but I think this is for sure. I mean, obviously everyone agrees Rachel's game to lose, and Rachel is the heavy favorite. Now, there's been some crazy takes floating around. We don't need to get too deep down the rabbit hole. I think that's for next week because we need to see what happens in this episode first. But yeah, there's crazy takes. Dom Abate saying that Rachel would potentially play the greatest game ever played in Survivor if she wins, which is, I think, an insane take. But I think Rachel's a really good. Rachel would be a great winner, but I think that's an outrageous take, to be honest. So I'm excited to address takes like that next week once we know for sure who the winner is. And I think, again, the narrative changes if Sam pulls it out, right? Then we'll debate Sam's spot in the winner ranks. And all of a sudden the narrative changes and we're like, Rachel needs to come back for 100%. So I want to see what happens first, but there's been some crazy takes online after this one.
Yeah, we can save that for next week. Whether Rachel wins or loses, we can save that. Because Dom doubled down. Dom was like, I'll go on RHAP. I'll debate it if you want. I'll debate the audience. I'll debate Rob. Rob could be the mediator. So, I mean, Dom is, and we'll get into it. Dom, I know Dom and Rachel are friends, and I think he's being genuine in his opinion. So I can't wait to hear whether she wins or loses what Dom has to say. I think for me, like, it's a little bit of a hyperbole take, but we'll get into it next week. But no, I think what I'll wrap up this podcast by saying for me, Dylan, is this season has had a very strong ending. I think what we've said for the last several weeks is the season was always like good. It was always good, but for me, like, it never reached the highs of like, oh my God, we didn't have like a Kelly boot moment, or we didn't have like the 4 weeks in a row where people went home with $1,000 in their pockets. We didn't have like the peaks, but we didn't have like the valleys of 45 and 46. And I think now that we've had, to your point, Operation Italy, we had the Rachel funeral. And by the way, maybe quarter of the season from Rachel, and where she goes, the best part about going to your own funeral is knowing that you're going to wake up. I mean, classic, like Undertaker from the coffin. Love that moment. But no, so that was a great boot. And then obviously the Genevieve episode boot. So we've had a very strong finish. And I think you and I were debating before the podcast, where will this rank, depending on who wins, where will this rank in our new era rankings? And I think for a while I was saying this is great, but this would be third. This is not going to pass 45, 46 for me. Now that we've had these last couple of weeks, I'm ready to say, depending on the winner, this could be either my favorite new era season or maybe second place. Because I still think last season had some of the greatest characters with like 4 weeks in a row of like shenanigans and idols. And then 45, even though I thought Dee was a dominant winner, it became a little obvious that Reba was going to steamroll. So I'm excited to debate next week where this falls, but depending on the outcome, this could be number 1 or 2 of the new era. So we'll see.
I'm excited to talk about it as well. Personally, my favorite of the new era, but we'll have to see that. Yeah, okay. It is. But we'll have to see how it ends next week. So excited to talk about that next week. We'll be back next weekend to discuss the finale. And that's all we got.
We'll see you for the finale, part 2 next week. So grab your torches and head back to camp.
Good night.